Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a genuinely terrifying reality for a lot of developers. You just spent months, maybe even years, building a brilliant SaaS platform. You poured your blood, sweat, and capital into writing the perfect code, designing the sleekest interface, and structuring this incredibly robust database. But here's the thing. Without the proper legal architecture wrapping around it, that incredible asset you built, it's essentially sitting in a glass house with the front door wide open.
Seriously, think about it. You built it, sure, but what actually stops someone from scraping your database or cloning your UI right this very second? What if a competitor just signs up for a trial, logs in, and systematically reverse engineers your entire platform's workflow? How do you actually fight back? Now, a lot of founders just kind of assume they're automatically protected because, well, they wrote the code. But as we're going to see today, defending a cloud-based business requires a highly specific approach.
So, let's assemble your legal shield. Here's what we're covering in today's agenda. First, the SaaS license myth. Second, the anatomy of the shield. Third, what not to include. Fourth, display and symbols. And finally, number 5, validating your rights. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. The SaaS license myth, a massive misconception. Let's dive right into this huge trap I see founders fall into constantly when they're getting ready to launch. There's this super common belief out there that there's some magical, universally recognized SaaS protection license that you can just, download, fill in the blanks, and be completely covered. But unlike standard open source licenses like the GNU GPL or the MIT license, a SaaS protection license isn't just a single universal badge you slap on a website. Honestly, treating it like one is basically buying a cheap padlock for a bank vault. Instead, it's a highly customized legal framework designed specifically around the unique mechanisms of your cloud software and APIs. It's really a living, breathing contract that's totally tailored to how your specific technology actually operates. And when it's properly constructed, this custom shield protects a massive volume of your assets. We're not just talking about the source code here. A robust framework covers your entire SaaS platform, your APIs, the web applications, your underlying databases, your distinct user interfaces, and yes, those proprietary algorithms you worked so incredibly hard to perfect. It even extends to your digital content and online business systems. Basically, it draws a definitive line around literally every piece of intellectual property that makes your business valuable.
Now, this shift is what trips up so many people. Traditional software licenses were built for an era of downloaded copies that users physically installed and, in some respects, owned. But SaaS licensing? Totally different beast. It strictly focuses on cloud access, hosted infrastructure, subscription rights, and temporary API usage. You have to remember, you aren't selling a copy of your software anymore. You're selling the right to temporarily access your hosted environment. So your legal documentation absolutely must reflect that reality.
Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of the Shield, Building Your Defense. Let's look at how this framework actually builds out, piece by legal piece, to make your business impenetrable.
Okay, so your shield must explicitly outline the rules of engagement. First off, you need a clear license grant detailing exactly who can use the service and how. Crucially, you also need a limitation of liability clause. Guys, this is absolutely vital. If your platform goes down or if there's, say, an accidental data loss, this clause limits your legal exposure so a simple server outage doesn't literally bankrupt your company. You also need to define governing law, which just means which jurisdiction handles any disputes, and termination rights, which gives you the ultimate power to just cut off access if a user misbehaves.
The absolute most crucial point here is establishing ownership of your code, designs, and content right out of the gate, so users know they are renting, not buying. You want something that says, quote, all intellectual property rights remain the sole property of company XYZ. This ownership clause is your bedrock. It formally claims your software, branding, data structures, and documentation as your exclusive intellectual property. Having this specific phrasing ensures that paying a monthly subscription fee doesn't accidentally transfer any ownership rights over to your clients.
Now, ownership is great, but you also need explicit boundaries that legally prohibit bad actors from messing with your stuff. Your restrictions section must specifically forbid users from reverse engineering your code, scraping your platform's data, or using automated extraction tools. You literally must explicitly ban them from sublicensing, reselling their access, or attempting to clone your application. Because if you don't list these restrictions out clearly, well, it becomes infinitely harder to enforce them when someone inevitably tries to copy your business model.
Section 3. What not to include. Avoid these traps. Because sometimes trying to be a little too aggressive with your legal documents can actually destroy their enforceability entirely.
Look, I get it. It's super tempting to write a license that claims you own absolutely everything that touches your servers. But claiming overly broad ownership, like trying to assert copyright over your client's own user-generated content, or including clauses that just straight up violate local privacy, consumer, or competition laws, that will instantly weaken your enforceability. If a judge sees a contract that's packed with illegal or blatantly unfair clauses, they might just throw out the entire agreement, leaving you with literally zero protection.
And here is a massive warning for you. Never, ever include false security guarantees. Calling your app 100% secure or hack-proof in your terms is a huge legal liability. If a breach occurs, and let's be real, in the modern digital age, it is always a possibility, those marketing buzzwords suddenly become legally binding promises that you broke. So stick to realistic, defensible limitations and completely avoid absolute guarantees when it comes to security or uninterrupted uptime.
All right, on to Section 4. Display, storage, and symbols, showing your shield. With the rules written and those dangerous clauses removed, let's look at how you actually deploy this protection across your user journey.
Your notices and terms really need to be everywhere the user interacts with your intellectual property. So they should be anchored in your website footer, of course, and detailed on a dedicated legal page, but crucially, they must be highly visible during the sign-up and checkout processes. And don't forget the more technical access points either, right? Things like your API developer portals, software splash screens, and even tucked inside the settings menus of your app. In the legal world, visibility equals enforceability.
When you're communicating this protection, you're going to see a mix of symbols online. Now, while there's no official, globally recognized SaaS protection symbol out there, you should absolutely be using standard copyright symbols for your content and trademark symbols for your brand identity. But just know this, if you see custom badges floating around that say things like SaaS protected or proprietary cloud system, those are purely for marketing. I mean, they look great and they might scare off a lazy copycat, but they carry absolutely zero legal authority on their own. Which brings us to Section 5, validating your legal rights, proving your ownership. Let's say the absolute worst happens. A competitor clones your UI and starts scraping your database. If you actually have to defend your code, how do you prove it's yours in a fight?
Interestingly enough, you generally don't need immediate government validation to have a binding agreement. Enforcement actually relies on a solid three-step sequence. Step 1 is rock-solid user acceptance, so making sure they actively click that I agree checkbox at sign-up. Step 2 is your internal evidence. We're talking about your Git commit history, your development records, and those timestamps that definitively prove you built it first. And finally, Step 3 is optional formal validation, like official copyright or trademark registration. You don't absolutely need it, but it definitely gives you much sharper teeth if you ever end up in court.
Because this legal framework intersects with some really complex copyright rules, strict privacy laws like the GDPR or CCPA, and international contract law. Trying to write this yourself using some free online template is incredibly risky. I cannot stress this enough. You absolutely must have a qualified technology or IP lawyer assemble this shield for you. Your developers can definitely provide the technical restrictions and API limitations, but an actual legal professional needs to weave all of that into a binding international contract.
So, here's your final blueprint. A true SaaS shield isn't just one single document. It is a constellation of targeted agreements working seamlessly together. Your terms of service govern general user rules. Your privacy policy and DPA dictate strict data handling and enterprise compliance. Your SLA outlines your uptime commitments, while the core SaaS license protects your actual software and IP rights. Together, working right alongside your technical security infrastructure, this creates a completely comprehensive fortress around your business.
Which leaves us with the ultimate question. A license is honestly just a piece of paper. It only protects what you have structurally set up to legally defend. So based on everything we've looked at today, is your SaaS legally bulletproof right now? Or is it just a highly profitable clone waiting to happen? Take the time to audit your legal framework, consult an expert, and lock your platform down. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you in the next one.